Welcome back to another UCL Fantasy video and podcast. This will be my team selection for Matchday 7, where I have the wildcard available, as well as 2 free transfers, and I'll delve into my plans for the upcoming deadline, but also Matchday 8, which is very important. Rotation will be rife at this stage of the competition, unlike any other time throughout the entire tournament. That includes the knockout playoff rounds in Matchdays 9 and 10, and of course the round of 16 and beyond. You wouldn't expect too much rotation at those stages of this tournament. Smash the like button and subscribe for new if you enjoy my content. Our aim is to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32,000 subscribers. I appreciate all the subscribers, commenters, patrons, super chatters, those that have gifted memberships in the recent live streams. There are links in the description below so you can support the channel even further by clicking the join button on YouTube or becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/DylanRCM. There's my Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Draft Hound, Spotify, and also Blue Sky. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. I made a goalkeeper transfer in Matchday 6 because I had the infamous duo of Blažević and Di Gregorio. Let's just call him Greg, like in Succession. He actually kept a clean sheet against Man City in a 2-0 victory, but got booked and delivered 6 points overall. So buying Alisson, despite his 5 saves and being pivotal in that 1-0 victory over Girona, I only gained 1 point from that goalkeeper transfer, but ultimately it's a point gained. Looking at the bright side, he got 7 points overall, which is a very healthy return from a goalkeeper, and it's been long overdue replacing Blažević, who has been awful all season. Ultimately though, could Liverpool rotate in Matchday 7 or 8 and give Kelleher another Champions League start? That's possible, and if that happens, I'm going to be in deep trouble with my goalkeepers once again. My defenders have been top-notch recently in UCL Fantasy, but that wasn't the case in Matchday 6. Kubarsi got 0 points as he got booked and conceded a penalty against Borussia Dortmund in a 3-2 thriller. I don't think Kubarsi has really lived up to the hype and the expectations I've placed on him since the summer. He is one of the top prospects in Europe in his position. He's got a lot of potential, but in UCL Fantasy terms, he's not getting enough ball recoveries, and Jules Koundé is actually worth 1 extra million on top of it. But I wouldn't be buying Barcelona defenders right now because they face Benfica away and Atalanta at home, and you can get better teams defensively in your defensive line, and also they have more to play for because Barcelona are second in the Champions League table, but don't expect Hansi Flick to rotate that much. My other options were much better though, including Boscagli, who I did sign fairly recently. He's a budget defender, and despite losing 1-0 to Brest, he got multiple ball recoveries, which was enough to deliver 5 points overall. So I'm very happy with this signing. He does face Red Star Belgrade away next, but then it's Liverpool at home, and there you're just really hoping for ball recoveries, even if Liverpool rotate very heavily, which you would expect in the final match day of the league phase. Now, unfortunately, my highest scoring player in my starting 11 is now injured. He is orange flag, so to speak, and doubtful in UCL Fantasy now, but basically don't expect him to play Matchday 7. The reports indicate Saliba will miss 2 to 3 weeks worth of action, so he has a major doubt for that huge clash against Manchester City, and that's a major blow for Arsenal, who just can't catch a break this season. Injuries are part and parcel of the game, but they have suffered a lot of issues to key players this season. Bukayo Saka is still out, and he's going to be unavailable until March. If you've got him, I would be looking to get rid, despite his mega return against Monaco, where I didn't buy him. That was a mistake of mine, and it cost me a lot of points in Matchday 6, but it has saved me a transfer Matchday 7, looking at the bright side, if you can even do such a thing after all those lost points. But my final option was Grimaldo, who kept a clean sheet against one of the best teams in Europe, a 1-0 victory for Bayer Leverkusen over Inter Milan, and he got that ball recovery point, and Grimaldo has been sensational all season in UCL Fantasy terms. He's one of the best wing-backs across Europe. He always has those goals and assists on top of the ball recoveries and clean sheets. And ultimately, this defensive line is decent, but William Saliba is out. After making all of my substitutions, I only had 3 starting midfielders in the end, and Rafinha was one of them. He scored in that 3-2 thriller against Borussia Dortmund, and he has been brilliant for Barcelona this season with that great performance against Bayern Munich earlier in this tournament, also PSG in the last campaign, and the amount of goals he's scoring, the chances he's creating, and those magic moments in the big games have been special from Rafinha. He is undoubtedly one of the front runners for the Ballon d'Or this season, but Barcelona have faded in La Liga, which might not really help his matters and his case, but in the Champions League, he is still going strong, and against Benfica and Atalanta, I could still see Rafinha doing fairly well. The same goes for the next option if he starts, because Liverpool could rotate heavily with their commanding position in the Premier League and the Champions League. But with the Champions League, they can rotate against Lille and still get the job done. He got 8 points against Girona, scoring the penalty. But Liverpool weren't great on the day. In fact, Robertson and Alisson were their two best players, but they just found a way to get the victory. And Girona were actually good on the day, but it wasn't enough. Quality prevailed, and Liverpool are top of the Champions League table. But the last option here is Gittins, who blanked. And whenever I don't have him, or if I play the limitless, for example, Gittins does really well, like he did against Real Madrid away when he scored. And he has been a bit frustrating for me personally. The same goes for Guirassy, who I sold fairly recently when he was doubtful. He came off the bench in Matchday 5 and scored, and in Matchday 6 against Barcelona, he scored a brace. So ultimately, selling Guirassy has been disastrous. But for his price, I think Gittins offers excellent value. I'd just be slightly careful about doubling or tripling up on Borussia Dortmund because they are in terrible form across all competitions. Two of my forwards returned, but it was very underwhelming for me. Julian Alvarez got a 7-pointer and a very early goal against Bratislava, but it was Griezmann who outshone him in Matchday 6, and it was the opposite in Matchday 5. Both of them were great options for the last matchday, which I highlighted, but now it's Bayer Leverkusen. I certainly don't mind Atletico Madrid players for the final matchday when they've got a much better fixture on paper, but they lost for the first time in 16 matches. Before their 1-0 loss against Leganés, Atletico Madrid won 15 consecutive games across all comps, and I think Alvarez has been outstanding in a lot of those matches, and I do think he's decent for the next two in UCL Fantasy, but if I'm building a wildcard or limitless team, Alvarez wouldn't be anywhere near it, especially for Matchday 7. Next up though is a big disappointment in Erling Haaland. 3 blanks out of 6 in the Champions League, and ever since game week 5 of FPL, he has fallen off a cliff. His confidence, I know he scored in a 6-0 victory for Man City over the weekend, and if they create a lot of chances for him, he's going to score goals, but I just don't think he's got that clinical edge to him at the moment. That could all change in the flick of a switch, but if you want a Man City attacker right now, it has to be Phil Foden for me, and Savio got a full rest against Ipswich Town at Portman Road, but Erling Haaland is still just a great option in UCL Fantasy, all things considered, facing PSG away, which won't be easy, but then it's Club Brugge at home in Matchday 8, and Haaland's record in the Champions League is ridiculous, essentially as many goals as games played for Borussia Dortmund, and now for Man City. He also had a great record for RB Salzburg too, but the final forward in my squad is Jonathan David, who was my Guirassy replacement. It hasn't paid off whatsoever. He got a 5-pointer, an assist against Sturm Graz in a 3-2 victory, but that just isn't enough for the hype and consistency he showed beforehand, and also with Guirassy doing so well. My Tuesday captain was Mohamed Salah, and he delivered 8 points against Girona from the penalty spot. It's not too shabby, but sometimes when you get a decent captaincy haul to begin with, it can be to your detriment, because a lot of you that might have had a blank on the Tuesday, you just go for the jugular on the Wednesday, and Saka delivered 19 points. He was a very popular captaincy option, and I didn't go for him to begin with, so that was a huge disappointment. He got 19 points for a brace, an assist, and the Player of the Match award, and ultimately that cost me, and I got a small red arrow to 38,000. It's not terrible, but it is much worse than what I'm used to in UCL Fantasy, and it's now about picking up the momentum again. Out of the 6 match days so far, I've had 3 brilliant weeks, including 2 of them where I got over 100 points, but the others, like Matchday 6, have been very disappointing to say the least. I'm hoping that Matchday 7 isn't one of them. There is a small chance that I'll play the wildcard this week, but if I don't, it's Alisson between the sticks. I've got 2 goalkeepers who play on the same day, and if you are wildcarding and all of this kind of jazz, making a goalkeeper transfer, don't look too much into them playing on different days, because essentially in Matchday 8, everyone plays at the same time, and we will have all the lineups. We can kind of navigate rotation that way, and using the wildcard in Matchday 8 can be a very powerful tool. You can essentially convert that into a limitless chip by chipping out your bench and investing a lot of money in your starting 11. So that's what my current plan is, to use the wildcard in Matchday 8. But if you are using it this week, one positive note is you don't need a full 15-man squad for Matchday 8. You just need 11 players. So as long as you can build a solid foundation full of teams and players that have something to play for, who should actually avoid rotation in Matchday as well, you can actually build a great team for both Matchday 7 and 8. So it can work to your benefit, but it's team dependent, and Alisson at home to Lille looks very promising, but if he doesn't start and Keller gets the nod, it's going to look very tricky with my substitutions. Despite Saliba's injury, I've still got 4 decent defenders, which includes Boskagli against Red Star Belgrade away. I'm not a big fan of him against Liverpool, but he can still give you 3 to 5 points through ball recoveries alone, and you would expect Liverpool to rotate, and PSV have a better chance of getting a result in Matchday 8 if that's the case. But looking ahead just for Matchday 7, a clean sheet is possible against the Serbian outfit. They've got a great atmosphere, it's going to be very hostile, but PSV have more quality and they should score some goals. Will they keep a clean sheet? That isn't guaranteed. I'm not really backing them to do so, but the chances are certainly there, and Boskagli is a very good UCL fantasy asset for his price tag. Next up though in this defensive line is Kim Min-jae, who is excellent at ball recoveries, although he didn't show it in a 5-1 win over Shakhtar Donetsk in Matchday 6, but it's Feyenoord away next. Not the best of fixtures for a defender, but I'm still fancying the likes of Elise, Musiala and Harry Kane to do very well. Kim Min-jae is certainly more appealing for Matchday 8 against Bratislava at home, and Bayern Munich still have something to play for. The same goes for Kubarsi, you could say, but Barcelona are so close to securing Champions League qualification. If I was building a wildcard or limitless team, Kubarsi would be nowhere near it, but he's not the worst option in the world, and he does face Benfica away next. You would back the Portuguese side to get a goal, but Di Maria has had some injury problems recently. You would expect them to be available for this game, but either way, Barcelona are the better team. They'll probably concede a lot of chances though, and I'd be surprised if they keep a clean sheet. But the last defender is Grimaldo. He doesn't have a great fixture this week against Atletico Madrid away, but he is fixture proof. He got 7 points against Inter Milan last week, and he's got the ball recoveries, the attacking potential, which is his main kind of gig. And in Matchday 1, from the get-go, he established himself as one of the best defenders in UCL Fantasy. Rotation will be my biggest enemy in Matchday 7 and 8, but if Mohamed Salah starts against Lille, I think he's a great frontrunner for the captaincy on the Tuesday, despite a dip in his recent form across all competitions actually. Against Spurs in the Carabao Cup, he was very poor. Against Man United, he was quite indifferent despite creating a big chance and scoring a penalty. And against Nottingham Forest, he actually played fairly well, but couldn't impact the game in the final third. And against Brentford recently, it was Darwin Núñez being the hero for Liverpool, and Salah wasn't involved in either goal. But against Lille, if he starts the game, you'd back him for a goal, potentially player of the match, and he could get some assists on top of it. But my other midfielders are still quite appealing, like Gittins facing Bologna away, but I'd be a bit careful about Borussia Dortmund assets because, like I mentioned earlier, they have been in terrible form, and if they don't get their act together soon, Nuri Sahin will be sacked, and there will be a lot of uncertainty around Borussia Dortmund. But Gittins is one of the top talents in his position throughout Europe, and Garassi has been a solid striker this season. If you've got that double up, I probably wouldn't sell, but if you are building a team fresh or looking to invest in a midfielder or forward, I'd be very careful about doubling or tripling up on Borussia Dortmund. But let's complete this midfield with some very decent options like Rafinha facing Benfica away. I wouldn't expect them to be rotated. Dani Olmo is injured once again, I believe, and ultimately Rafinha has started every single Champions League game this season, and Barcelona will want to secure their spot in the round of 16, and I think Liverpool will too, but obviously they're more likely to rotate than Barcelona based on how both managers have approached this season. But last, and certainly not least, is Florian Wirtz, who has a tough game this week, but then it's Slavia Prague in Matchday 8 at home, and you would definitely want Wirtz for that. So if you got Wirtz, don't sell him this week. He could still do something against Atletico Madrid actually, and that should be a great game between Atletico Madrid and Bayer Leverkusen. The current plan is to line up with a 4-4-2 formation and buy one of Vinicius Jr. or Kylian Mbappe to replace Erling Haaland. Real Madrid have a lot to play for. They're facing Salzburg this week, and then in Matchday 8, they've got a decent fixture against Brest away, and you would back the likes of Bellingham, Vinicius and Mbappe to haul very well. It has been Mbappe stealing the show recently. He scored a brace this weekend, but Vinicius Jr. was suspended for that game. That's why he didn't feature. He is still the #1 penalty taker, and he's been very consistent with goal contributions this season. So either way, you can't really go wrong. And in some cases, I would advocate an offensive double-up with both Vinicius and Mbappe occupying 2 of the 3 forward slots. But at the moment, I've got the other side of Madrid covered with Julian Alvarez facing Bayer Leverkusen. You could argue I've got a few clashes here with Grimaldo, Wirtz and Alvarez, which isn't ideal, but I certainly wouldn't mind an Aleti attacker like Griezmann or Alvarez, and then Florian Wirtz. That still looks very promising, and Grimaldo can get a goal contribution as well. On the bench, I've got some decent options, which is crucial for Matchday 7 and not so much for Matchday 8. Di Gregorio is facing Club Brugge away, and I could start Greg instead of Alisson if I got any doubts about Alisson starting the game against Lille, with Kelleher being brilliant for Liverpool in his stead in this competition. Gyökeres could be another transfer in for me, facing RB Leipzig away from home, and I've also got Kimmich and Saliba in this 15-man squad. So essentially, I can make 2 transfers, kind of bolstering my forward line by replacing Jonathan David and Erling Haaland for Vinicius/Mbappe and Gyökeres. That is my current plan, but you could argue Saliba is the bigger priority, and later on I'll show you some different transfer plans which show some replacements for Saliba, but in terms of striking that balance of covering Matchday 7 and 8, that could be fairly difficult. But remember, you don't need a 15-man squad for the final matchday of the league phase because everyone plays at the same time. You can't change the captaincy or make substitutions in Matchday 8 specifically. But with the captaincy this week, I'm looking at Mohamed Salah on the Tuesday, and if needed, Vinicius Jr. will be my final captain against RB Salzburg at home. This transfer isn't locked in. I could go for Mbappe instead of Vinicius, and sometimes you could even go for both in an ideal world. Jude Bellingham, who I sold several months ago, is now looking like a great midfielder to round off the league phase stages, but I do like this 15-man squad I have, except for a few teething issues, like William Saliba, who will be out for several weeks, and he's missing a plum fixture against Dinamo Zagreb at home. So not having any Arsenal players for that could be slightly concerning, but the Gunners have been fairly inconsistent and vulnerable in recent weeks. Even defensively, they are without a clean sheet in 6 consecutive games, but the captaincy is quite nailed on for me if I make these transfers. The wildcard is a distinct possibility, but the most likely scenario is that I'll activate it for Matchday 8. If I decide to replace William Saliba instead and keep the likes of David and Alvarez in my setup, it could be Mbappe in for Haaland, and of course Vinicius is still a front runner in the forward position, and I could buy Trent Alexander-Arnold or Virgil van Dijk for Matchday 7, but is that the safest pick with Matchday 8 in mind? Probably not, and there aren't many defenders that I'm really that keen on to buy for the next 2 match days, and I'd rather invest in the midfield and forward line despite William Saliba being definitively out, whilst my other 14 players are good to go, so to speak, although with Di Gregorio and Alisson, I can't rotate between them in Matchday 7. It isn't a perfect squad, of course, but I don't need to wildcard, I believe, unless we get more injuries and kind of random news over the next day or so, and I will be covering this in the deadline stream on Tuesday, but there is so much more content and things to talk about, and they have been covered in the best wildcard and limitless team videos respectively. Check out the chip strategy guide I made several months ago. It's still relevant today. That concludes another UCL Fantasy Team Selection video, this time at a Matchday 7. I've got 2 free transfers and the wildcard available. A -4 here is a possibility by replacing Saliba for one of Van Dijk, Trent, or another defender who's probably safer for Matchday 7 and 8 in terms of starting both matches. I can get Gyökeres or a striker of that ilk, maybe De Ketelaere as a Matchday 7 punt to replace Jonathan David, and then one of Mbappe or Vinicius Jr. to replace Erling Haaland. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Our aim is to get this to 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32,000 subscribers. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Spotify, and Blue Sky can all be found in the description. I wish you all the best luck for Matchday 7. Enjoy the Champions League football and keep your eyes peeled for the deadline stream tomorrow.